Hello, it's good to be here with you today. My name is Wade Alt, and today's topic is IT security versus cybersecurity. What are the differences? Why are they important? And most importantly, how do they work together? Because we see it as both being critically important and needed in order to protect our customers, but there is a difference, and we're going to talk about that today. This is a conversation we're used to having with customers. It's very logical for them to ask for us to articulate how we integrate with various IT network infrastructure organizations, whether they're internal as part of the customer constituencies or if they're outsourced providers. And a lot of times it's both. Excited to talk to you today. A little bit about me. I'm Chief Operating Officer here at Deep Seas, and this topic is something I'm very passionate about because in my past, I've led both organizations, IT security as well as cyber organizations, and I recognize the value that both can bring. So it's not a one or the other to me, it's a one and the other that optimizes our customer cyber defense program. You need both, but they are focused on different things, and that's what we're going to talk about, how they're different. So let's start with the macro level and what the ecosystem view, how we look at the ecosystem view. And you can see working from the bottom towards the top, you have your information technology. It's focused on your integrated tech operations, your hosting, your business continuity. You have your IT security there in the middle. There's where the focus is on resilience, management of user and resource privilege, network controls, segmentation of both network and resource, and then that cybersecurity, that's where you're starting to focus on the threat, the building of threat detections that you're pushing into customers' controls, which we'll talk more about, integrating your response across the business and across the constituencies, running threat hunts. And this is where Deep Seas plays. We focus on that top piece. We work with our customers, providers, their internal teams, to ensure that those lower two components are in place and are operational and working. So our mission starts thinking those controls are in place or validating that those controls are in place. And really our detection is focusing on the actors that are going to look to bypass those controls. And in our experience, inevitably, actors will find a way to bypass those controls, and having the cyber defense capabilities ready when that does occur. And that's where we come in. That's where we get in the fight in protecting our customers' environment. So more on cyber program. Let's talk a little bit about how we look at a cyber program in its entirety. And if we go to the next slide, you can see you have programs on the left-hand side that are defending attack surfaces on the right-hand side. Let's talk about the programs on the left. You can see that at the bottom, it starts with visibility, right? And that's on purpose, right? Visibility first, then detection, then response, then expanding, adjusting, tuning, and improving. So makes sense when you think about it, right? You're not able to detect something if you can't see it. If you can't detect it, you can't respond to it. If you can't respond to it, you can't prevent it. And that's really how we think of those programs on the left. On the right, you've got your attack surfaces, and the programs on the left have to be able to defend all the attack surfaces, and it has to be integrated because we know that actors will be traversing from one to the other. But we also recognize that each attack surface is going to have their own nuance on how to implement those programs on the left. Response, for example, the way you respond to a threat in an IT environment is going to be very different than the way you respond in a manufacturing environment. And that's why we have MDR capabilities for both IT and OT, mobility, cloud, because they're different, and recognizing that difference. But there are some similarities, and those programs are meant to define those similarities as well as the differences. So the programs, they're enabled by customer controls there on the bottom, and it's all integrated into this operational data and fabric. Those controls, you can see how we use them to build our detection strategy. And you can see each one of those detection categories has a little symbol. It shows the programs where they help and support, right? So there's a little bit of a reality setting here and an opportunity with our customers to talk through this, right? Firewalls, as an example, you can see that on the far left there. You can see it doesn't have a detection symbol, but it does have visibility and response. Now, we're not saying that there's zero detection capabilities in a firewall, but we do believe there's higher value detection capabilities in this integration fabric than what firewall can provide. However, firewall is really important when we think about it from a response and from a visibility standpoint. So our goal overall is pushing detections as far left the kill chain as possible, right? That's where response is simple. That's where it's low risk to the business. When you move further to the right, that's where you have higher risk and you have higher likelihood of impact to the business. So we're constantly pushing our detection to the left. Now you can see alerts are being generated on the left by these controls. Telemetry is being generated on the right from these controls. That telemetry is telling us about the health, the performance, the availability of the control. Those alerts are telling us the detection that's coming from the control. So both are really important. Let me give you an example. If a company has a network IDS sensor, that third box there down on the detections, if packet loss is not detected from the telemetry information coming off that control, that could have a significant material impact on our detection capability. So both need to be in place and operating in order to protect our customers. And that's where that partnership between left-hand side cyber and that right-hand side IT security come to play. Both of these, the telemetry and alerts, are being fed up into the security controls management on the right, if you go to the next slide, and the cyber operations management on the left-hand side. Again, you can see on the right, it's information about the controls versus information from the controls, both feeding into their instrumentation. On the left-hand side, the cyber operations management, it's about the event correlation and enrichment, containment, mitigation, remediation. On the right-hand side, it's about optimizing that preventative. And that's really, if you go to the next slide, how we see the difference between cyber and IT security. You can see now my point. It's not one or the other. It's one and the other working together to provide comprehensive cyber defense capabilities to our customers. So if you go to the next slide, really it's about focus on the left-hand side is about threat, and focus on the right-hand side is about performance. Both looking at controls, both using those controls to run their mission, but you can see how the mission is slightly different. So the inevitable question, how does this all work? What does a workflow look like when you put this all together? And so we're going to share with you what we articulate and how we articulate that workflow with our customers. It really starts with that level 0 support. It's about that infrastructure and availability. It's about that critical function. That then leads to level 1. That's where you're beginning to do the alert monitoring, detecting, containment, and some low-level remediation. That moves into a level 2 and a level 3, where you're getting a little bit more complex in your alert triage, your correlation, your enrichment, your fusing of intel, and your fusing of analytics, and providing more sophisticated containment, decision, and action. And then finally, on the far right, your level 4, that's where you've invoked incident response. That's where your forensic investigation with legal comes into play, evidence management, chain of custody. We have a much more detailed view of this on the interaction between each of these levels, right? But this is a good summary where you can see how they play. You can see the sourcing options there, where you have your IT MSP that's doing a lot of level 0. That could be an internal company as well, but Deep Seas is really focused on that level 1, 2, and 3, and then interacting and supporting level 4, whoever that level 4 provider may be, and how it all comes together. And in some cases, we get this question a lot. Well, what if I already have an MSSP, right? So that green box gets reduced. If you go to the next slide, where level 2, level 3 becomes what Deep Seas focuses on. And then we interact with that level 1. So we're very flexible on that. And it's a key component of how we approach a customer's environment, is having that flexibility to integrate with multiple providers, multiple internal teams, and pulling together into a comprehensive cyber defense program for our customer. And you can see on the bottom how the information technology, there's an interaction between each of these entities with Deep Seas, with the IR firm, and with that IT provider, whether it's internal team or an IT MSP. So let's take a real life example to show how this works. We're actually going to use an example of something that really happened. This is in the first 30 days of us being introduced to a customer. I'm going to set the stage for you. This was a client, very large, 192,000 endpoints, global footprint. government contractor, heavy machinery producer, highly targeted by actors, and already had a SOC in place. When we came in, unbeknownst to us, they were already under attack with a variant of WannaCry called WannaFake. Our analysts were able to get a hold of this in the first couple of days and dissect it, and we discovered that this worm didn't have any decryption keys. The intent wasn't to collect data or make money. The intent of this worm was to destroy. And we found ourselves in a pretty tough situation. So you can see here the number of files that we analyzed, the number of packets analyzed. We generated around 449,000 alerts, which we were able to reduce through our tech, through our aggregation capability, down to about 117,000 alerts. The question is, who takes it from here? A lot of providers, this is where they stop. This is where their mission stops. And all those alerts are now on the responsibility of the client SOC, who's already overworked, already overwhelmed. We take it the next step. We do the investigation, we do the research, we do the validation, and most importantly, we do the prioritization. So in this case, over these 30 days, we built 19 cases. And you can see they range in terms of their criticality, right? Everything from we have an active incident, where in this case, we are already under an active incident, down to low priority where, hey, this is something that needs to be changed from a preventative control update in your next change window. In this case, those critical priorities was our discovery of machines that were infected that the SOC was not aware of. Those high priority were machines that were vulnerable but not yet infected. And then there were other things that were happening in the environment that had nothing to do with this ongoing incident that had to be researched, validated, and prioritized. So those big cases became all-consuming to the client SOC as they worked with the business to respond and remediate. A lot of what DeepSeas was doing was basically running day-to-day operations, continuing to keep things moving, addressing some of those lower priority. And most importantly, out of all this was validating changes were working. There were many times where a customer would make a change, the SOC would work with the business, a change would be done, and that change didn't work. So our validation was able to help them make sure that the changes they put in place were effective. That number 4 is really important, and it's a way that we measure the sophistication of a cyber program. It's one thing to consume intel. It's another thing to produce intel from what you're seeing in your environment. And in this case, we generate around 78 intel updates about this particular WannaCry variant, but also those other cases had intel that was important. And then if you go to the next slide, we were able to push that to our fleet of other customers so that we were ready for this variant to show up, which in fact it did. We did have customers over the next couple of days that got hit with this same thing. We were already prepared, controls were already in place to detect, and we were able to stop that variant from getting inside other customers' environments. So hopefully this gives you, kind of landing the plane on how it all comes together and how we expect to work inside our customers' environments with different teams, different outsourced providers. It really does take a team, take a village to make this all work. So hopefully that gives you a good understanding of where we are and what we do. If you're interested in more, we have a lot of material at deepseas.com. I'm also interested in hearing from you. Please feel free to reach out. I can talk about this all day, and it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, and I wish you all well.